MG, how you doing, buddy?
Good man, what's going on?
The usual. And there is Scotty over there. How you doing, Scotty? As you mentioned before, you're feeling a little bit under the weather.
On Saturday, there was someone coughing. I could hear it, and it was right near where we were. And I was like, "It's fucking all these germs floating around here." And sure enough, after a huge day Saturday, I woke up Sunday and not feeling the best and just trying to fight it off. But it's all right. It's part of being in prep sometimes. I was just saying to MT, one of the things when you're obviously consuming a little bit less energy, you see a bit of a down regulation in immunological function. Things this week, I've noticed my hands, all the cuts are coming through, but equally aesthetically, my physique's changed a lot in the last 7 days. So I know I'm going to a new level, so to speak, and that's why it comes with some of those perturbations. But you just embrace it.
When do we get some more photos, Scotty? When are you going to post some
No, I
stuff?
think he said that's it. He said that was it. I actually saw him in the shower in Adelaide on the weekend, so I got my fix.
Couldn't reach that last bit on my back, and then I turned around. So what's this
there.
guy doing in here with me? Yeah.
It was big enough.
So what? No more progress pics?
No, I mean, I don't post a lot of this anyway. I'm just kind of going just a little bit dark mode, just
Okay.
saving until the first one. I think I'm going to do some posing up in Queensland with you boys next weekend, but whether we put anything up, I don't think so. I just want to stay under the radar. But yeah, I'm happy with how I'm going, man. I'm getting leaner.
What's the body weight at the moment?
I had a new low weight yesterday morning and I was 83.9. And I reckon I was right. I reckon it's going to be lowest weight will be probably high 82s.
Yeah, because you said your stage weight was around that last time.
Carved up, yeah. So I reckon but I had to pull down like the lowest that I was in prep. I think I had some high 79s.
Really?
Yeah, but equally, I know that in my last prep, I was too lean for too long and lost a bit of muscle. But I reckon topped up on stage, I should be somewhere in that high 84 mark. Like the difference now when I am flat can't remember, I had a refeed about a week or so. Was one of the other days. And anyway, I just got out of the shower and Jenny walked in and she just said, Jesus, as if like you look.
Do you have a towel around you? Or
And fall in the sense because normally when she sees me out of the shower, I'm like vascular, but I'm just super flat and always just look like, I'm tired and I'm wrecked. But when the carbohydrate goes in, it's really cool to see. You just come to life the more meals that go in. So I'm probably 2 more weeks away until I start bringing food up a little bit more regularly, and then I'll be able to get a little bit more consistency in where it's at. But yeah, things are going good.
And then
So
what
how
happened
many weeks?
after that? What happened after she said, Jesus?
I can't even remember.
I love how she was really trying to remember.
You fell asleep.
Yeah, no, not much. I'll probably mean like just that validation because she's other than me, she's the only one. I mean, you boys have seen a little bit of me, but she's the only one that really sees, how I'm going. But she actually said to me the other night, "Are you gonna start bringing food up now? Like you're pretty lean." And I'm like, "There's probably maybe another kilo to go, but equally to go from like really shredded to inside out." Like I know when my glutes, the top of my glutes are in and the sides and starting to see some striations there. And when I'm not suffering from edema and a lot of fatigue, like feathering my legs and, more of that vascularity in the legs, stuff like that is when I know. And it's a slippery slope because if you push for too long, and that was kind of what happened in 2020, then it can get away from you. So that's why I'm just, being very, very mindful of that. You know what, I'll do some posing and you boys can tell me if you reckon need to just pull up or if you're like, nah, man, you're still fat, push harder.
How many weeks out for your first one?
6 weeks on Saturday.
Nice.
What's the date of that show?
The 1st of October is the IFBB Queensland. Yeah.
1st October.
And
Awesome.
then 2 weeks after that's the NBA Pro Show.
Awesome. Exciting. We obviously travelled last weekend on the Saturday, and I did see you dragging us towards the end of the day for sure. You were definitely feeling it. Could see.
Yeah.
You were pushing through. The food was low and the energy was low, but
And we did have a big sesh.
yeah.
We did. And we were even saying that we started feeling pretty good. And by the end of it, I mean, even you, MG, you were fucked as well.
Just ran out of steam, man. I was great for about an hour and then
Just hit the wall. And equally, I think, that 4 a.m. wake up and then the flying, I was wrecked. And then thank goodness for that monster that just gave me a second wind. And that's how it kind of goes up. And then it went down and then it went up.
did you have 3 of those that day?
Yeah, and I had the shittest sleep I woke up at 6 a.m. on Sunday, like felt hungover. And then I went
like that'd be good to talk through, like for people to understand. Like, yes, you did have 3 monsters a day and you were gassed, but like, what was the repercussion of that?
well, not just that plus we had a coffee at the airport before we got on the plane too. And I actually didn't even drink all of mine because in my head I was like, as shit as I feel now, and this is going to give me a little bit more energy. Like I was trying not to show that I was hurting, but maybe towards the end I was. But full transparency, I was hurting from as soon as I got to the airport. Like Jenny messaged me and said, "The boys have no idea how much you're hurting right now, do they?" And I said, "Oh, is it that evident?" But as the day unfolded, yeah, it's part and parcel of it. Like there's not much that you can do about it. It is what it is. I tried to do the best I could to mask it, but obviously I didn't do a very good job. But I think the additional caffeine definitely helped to keep me going. But equally, I would never normally have 3 monsters. But I was also really hungry, and our flight got delayed as well.
Yeah.
And I knew that I had a nice meal at home waiting for me to eat before I went to bed. But it was just I wouldn't normally have that much caffeine that later in the day. So I think, what time did we get home? You dropped me home. It was like 10, man. So by the time I had a shower, then I ate. It was about 11:30, and I was like awake. I was tossing and turning for probably the first few hours, and then 6 a.m. I got up and went into the gym and just did some mobility and sat on the bike for a bit, and I was just trashed. And I think that's probably partly why as well. Copped a bit of sickness the last few days, but if I could go back, I probably wouldn't have had that third one just to take out that caffeine. I think if I had all that caffeine before midday, it would have been all right. But because some of it went in around about 3:34, that's pretty late for me to have that. But equally, that was probably one of the harder days of prep that I've had. Like we were all gassed. I mean, even you, MT, you were like, "Man, I'm really hungry," and you're like, "I'm sorry, I'm gonna stop saying that." I was like, "Bro, come on."
Yeah, after I said I'm really hungry, I realized that I was talking to someone that was in prep, and I said, I will never bring it up again. And then when you said to me, MT, are you going to eat soon? Are you hungry? I was like, I'm not commenting, bro. I'm not.
Yeah. I think the biggest like takeaway from that is like think about where it started, and it started on shit sleep. And that was really the thing that kind of set it all off. And yeah, we had periods of reasonable energy, but like shit night's sleep, shit performance. And that's why we always talk about prioritizing sleep. Like it is just so important. And like I always look at like weekly averages, right? You guys will do this too, but like you look at a weekly average and someone goes from 7.3 to an average of 6.3. Well, you take that 1 hour out of night, times it by 7 nights, you've missed a whole night's sleep. And people don't think about it that way. Take 1 hour out every night, and all of a sudden you're 1 day down for the week. And it's a harder place to come back from.
It is. And equally when that happens. So for example, one thing that I've been trying to do since then, I've been going to bed half an hour earlier to try and make that up, that net addition over the last few nights. And it's definitely made a difference. Like when I wake up, like energy wise, I feel really good, but I just physically feel a bit unwell, but that's just part of it. But it is one of those things. It's a trade-off, but the positive side was that we had a really, really good session. But we did obviously fade towards the end, but equally waking up at 4, traveling in the state, running workshop, training, and then getting home at 10. It's not like ideal. You wouldn't normally do that, but equally, I think a lot of people when that happens, they're probably more likely, oh, fuck it, I'll just eat something at the airport or I'll just do whatever. So I think still being and staying on your disciplines is very, very important. And equally, we did huge steps. Saw both your boys' check-ins were in the 20. My step count was 24,500 on the Saturday, and most days my step count's between 9 and sort of 10.
Yeah,
so that was the other thing as well.
Yeah, we got up all the time at the airport, walking around, making sure we kept our steps up, kept moving. Whenever we had something to eat or something, we got up and we walked around, got our steps in. We all had our food ready and prepped with us. We used the parents' room to use the microwave to heat our food up. Like we were all good to go. Like traveling didn't hinder us at all from staying accountable and adherent. Yeah, it was a good workshop though. It was a
great workshop. And I think most of the people that attended, they would have no idea that we were maybe a bit tired or maybe they would have known that I was, again, I thought I was pretty good running. Was it just at the end?
You were good. Okay.
Yeah. But no, it was really good. We had a great turnout. We had a couple of girls drive, which we couldn't believe. They basically left the same time we did from Mildura to drive all the way down.
Yeah, so they drove from Mildura to Adelaide, 5-hour trip. They walked in together, and then when we asked, "Oh, okay, where are you from?" "Oh, Mildura." "Oh, where are you from, Mildura?" "Hang on, what? You don't know each other? You don't know who each other are, and you drove from the same place for 5 hours and rock up at the same time?" So that was really, really interesting, and it was a funny story. That was great. So, and we had another interesting thing happen. MG, you want to talk about the guy that was having a look what we were doing? He was another gym member that was having a look at our workshop from an outside.
The one that wants to potentially sponsor the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a cool dude. He was a big dude as well. He was 55 or 56. But anyway, he owns a company that manufactures and produces e-bikes.
Yeah.
And, he's obviously quite into bodybuilding, and was asking a little bit about how it all works and, what's the biggest division. And it's like, I want to give an e-bike, brand new e-bike, to the winner of the show. I'm like, there's no winner of the show, but maybe you could pick a division that you like and we can give away like an e-bike. What are those things worth? Thousands, right?
Yeah.
Brand.
That's awesome.
There's everyone who's listening who was like, oh, I was going to do A and B Vic, but I might do A and B South Australia now just because there's an e-bike up for grabs.
That was awesome. That was so good of him to just come over and then offer that. That was amazing. That was so good. All right, let's get started.
And wasn't there a couple of other random everyday members that you said? I was taking Ev through posing, so I didn't see it, that came up to us or came up to you?
They're fans of the podcast and just said,
how good's that?
You guys are in my gym. I've been listening to you this morning and here you are in my gym. I didn't know you were going to be here. So that was pretty damn cool.
We did. We are so grateful for the people that came and then the people that saw us and said hello to us. And yeah, we appreciate it so much. It's really humbling, to be honest. So thank you for everyone that came. We really, really do appreciate it. All right, let's get stuck into some questions. So I didn't put out a question box because we still had so many to go through. So I'm just going to go through it and just start from the top, and we'll just work our way through. So the question that was sitting here from a while ago is about someone that's a bodybuilder but wants to train to do a half marathon during their off season, during their growth phase. They do one long run a week. It's about 10 to 20 kilometers. And then they do one little small run. Will it impact their growth phase? Have you ever had someone in their off season want to do something that's completely different to bodybuilding?
Yeah.
How would you navigate that situation, Scotty?
So my athlete was a female. Equally, I've got a couple that have sort of deviated from, they still lift, but they've gone from like high level bodybuilders to more hybrid athletes, getting back into running, playing netball. But this particular athlete, I sort of just said that you need to decide which one you want to do, because you're not going to be an optimal marathon runner as heavy as you are as a bodybuilder.
Mm-hmm.
And your marathon running is not going to be conducive with the requirements of being a bodybuilder. So you can't really have 140 and 140 out. Well, you can, but you won't be all that great at either. If you're heavy and you're doing lots of running as a marathon runner, then you're putting a lot of stress on connective tissue and on your joints. You're going to be heavier. You're carrying around, like, let's say that you're in your off season. I think about it, if I was 105 trying to run a marathon, I reckon I would die of cardiac arrest after about 4Ks. Versus at my weight now, I could probably do it no dramas because I'm not carrying 20 kilos lighter. So I think you need to decide at what level you're wanting to do it at. But equally, the way that you eat is going to be a bit different, in the sense that if you're training for a marathon and you want to run a good time, then obviously you're looking at improving your aerobic capacity. And so your nutrient timing you'll be prescribing probably more running low or using lower carbohydrate variables to reinforce / to train and improve mitochondria biogenesis. So mitochondria are what help us produce ATP. That's where we do produce ATP. And so in order to be able to maximize that and improve aerobic capacity, then you would need to be doing stuff, training in a lower carbohydrate state, because that does help to improve mitochondria biogenesis. So running low, training low, recovering low, spending time in that, because from an exercise metabolism pathway, you're using different proteins that are switched on or more heightened in a lower carbohydrate state. Whereas if you're a bodybuilder, carbohydrates, our preferred substrate, you're going to fuel that before you train. So it can be a little bit murky in terms of nutrient timing and using the two to go hand in hand. But I would suggest which one's more important to you. If you want to do it as a bucket list thing and you're not phased on your time, then maybe you run a fat loss phase. Like I would try and time a marathon around when you're running a fat loss phase so you're a bit lighter. And then maybe at the conclusion of that, you can spend a period of time doing that. But if you want to run a marathon and you're doing one long run and one short run a week, you're not going to perform all that well during the marathon. It's not a whole lot of training.
Yeah. I've had some clients where they've wanted to do something different for a point in time. Like maybe they want to go do powerlifting or even like marathons and things like that. And I normally say to them, look, we're just not going to bank this time as your off-season time. Like this is not going to go towards you being an optimal bodybuilder. So the time that you take away from doing this, we're not going to count that as a time spent trying to be a better competitor. And even some of them, I would say to them, I know I had someone that's recently just joined who wanted to join in the past, but they said, I want to do a powerlifting meet. Would you can we do a bit of both? And I said to them, stay with your current coach, do your powerlifting, get it out of your system. When you're done, let me know. Because to try to do something in between, you're not going to be a good powerlifter. You're not going to be a good bodybuilder. Do what's currently motivating you, get that all out of your system. And then when you're ready, then we'll just focus on bodybuilding. So sometimes I even do that. I said, like, you know what? If you want to do that, step away, go find someone that's going to help you to be the best at that. And then when you're ready, come back. I don't want to half-ass things and do things in between. But as you said, if it's just like a bucket list thing, hey, I want to do one marathon for charity, or I want to do, yeah, cool. Like, let's just do it. No big deal. But we're not going to bank it as time spent productively in the off season and then just move on from there.
Just on that, if you are looking at doing powerlifting, I would still strongly advise if your coach has a large area of expertise around nutrition or nutritional science, keep that coach. Don't rely on your powerlifting coach, because having worked with powerlifters, and I do work with them, the nutritional recommendations and the knowledge within that sector, not to hate, but it's not very good, just because they may be very, very good with their periodization pertaining to strength training. But like when you first go to a meet, I remember the first time I went backstage with one of Zach's comps, and there's hugely overweight people smashing hot chips and hot dogs and whatever, thinking it's going to prime me better. And I'm having this, and also how they approach like cutting if you need to make a weight.
Mm-hmm.
You want someone who actually understands how that works, versus so that you can actually get on the platform and still perform optimally. But for the most part, and I know I'm generalizing, but from my experience, the education around nutrition is pretty poor. So you would be better off saying, okay, my powerlifting coach is going to look after all of the programming regarding my training, but Michael Trimboli is going to oversee all of my nutrition, comp day nutrition, how I hydrate. For example, let's say that you've just done a 5 kilo cut in a week, and then you've dehydrated, you got to rehydrate, you haven't had any food, you're pushing in, I want you to have 250, like this is a typical protocol, you'll have 250 grams of carbs, bang, 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 bang on all these meals. And anyone that's educated knows that you're not going to be able to take on board all of that or petition it, versus smaller feedings, using caffeine to help direct that and saturate muscle glycogen. When you use caffeine around it, how you hydrate, all of those things come into it. And if you don't have that background, you're not obviously going to be able to help someone. And equally, you could have an awesome prep for 12 weeks, you do a cut, and then your coach has no idea about how to get that weight off you and then bring you back to homeostasis / perform optimally. And you could perform shit because you don't have the fuel in the system that you need. So I think if you are going to do powerlifting, definitely if you've got a really good physique coach that understands nutrition, keep him.
Good advice. Anything on that, MG?
No, I was just saying a story. The last powerlifting comp that I went to, obviously I had Ben competing and Zach was competing. You weren't there that day, but it was so funny because it was kind of middle of the meet and the two boys were sitting down and they were eating. And if you looked at what Zach was eating and what Ben was eating, it was very similar, right? And then we were in backstage and everyone was just, man, you were spot on. It was fucking donuts. It was chocolates. It was pies. And even Zach made a comment. He's like, I see where the educated ones are. So
yeah, man,
it does
it's
make
crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a bit sad.
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Yeah.
next one. About training still. Does leaning forward in the hip abduction machine make a difference compared to sitting straight or leaning back? I see so many girls doing it at the gym, just wondering what the difference is. So obviously the hip abduction machine is the one you sit and you spread your legs open is the movement that's happening. If you are leaning forward, what's going to happen is you're not going to be able to recruit the upper area of the glute. You're going to recruit more of the side. The upper area won't get recruited because it is in a stretched position, so it won't go through a range of motion. When you do sit back, then you're able to contract that upper area. Now, doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It's just that, one is isolating one part of the glute over the other. The other one, leaning back, is using a lot more of the glute, so you should be able to lift heavier. I just program a bit of both and just do some programs say leaning forward, some programs say leaning back. I would never stick to one. And this is with every exercise. Never stick to just one variation all the time. It should be periodizing different variations of all your lifts too. Anything on that, Scotty or MG?
No, I think just more like what you said, when you've got more thoracic extension and you're in the sat upright position, you're typically going to recruit more fibers, which if I'm looking at what am I getting the most bang for my buck for, it's like if I'm squatting, we know there's so much research now and it's the talk of the town around training in length and muscle positions. It does seem more logical that obviously the further that you can stretch a muscle, the more motor units you can recruit, more contractile units you can recruit, obviously more blood going in, more cellular swelling, more mechanical tension, damage, and so on. So that would be more likely to elicit hypertrophy adaptation. But equally, there's a place for partials, and perhaps that's it. You want to focus on more of the glute med rather than glute max. It just depends on what you're wanting to do. But I think it's important that you understand the difference between the two. And equally, there's times where sometimes when people are starting to accumulate fatigue, they'll lose that upright position and they'll fall forward a little bit more, which you could resemble to, let's say you're doing bicep curls and you're going full range and you're in lengthened position. And then as you start to fatigue, you start doing some partials at the back end. It's not necessarily wrong or that they're bad reps, but they may just be those last little finishes versus not doing them at all. So I think context is important, but everything that you just said is absolutely spot on.
Awesome. All right. Change of pace. And it's probably something I was going to bring up with you, Scotty. It's about getting full blood tests done. So someone just asked about, they want to get their blood test done. They got it done at the end of prep. They want to do it in their peak off season. What kind of data should they gather? One thing I've recommended to people in the team and other competitors in the past is jumping onto a site called iMedical. And then there's different types of tests you can get. There's like a sports or performance test. There's different variations of it. Obviously, they all cost different things, but even the most basic one is going to give you, full bloods, liver, thyroid, kidney function, some hormone related data also. You can even do fasting glucose. There's IGF-1 is also in there. There's testosterone. So have a look.
And you can build your own too. You can add ones that you want to put in.
Yeah, you can add. So you can even kind of make your own or add some to the test too. So I just recommend going into iMedical, and I think it's called Sports or Sports version 1, 2, and 3. And you can have a look at those. But Scotty, I think you said you got a set done at the start of prep. Is that right?
Yeah, I bought my bloods up. I was just trying to find it's through Australian Clinical Labs. It was through IMED, the exact same link. And a few of my clients have done that. Even some of my just everyday clients, I encourage online clients that I work with to go and get a blood panel, more just to have a look at any kind of, because when you get a normal metabolic panel, you can have a look to see if there's any micronutrient deficiencies as well. So someone's super low in vitamin D or something like that, you could be like, we're coming into winter, you need to be mindful of that, or some of their inflammatory markers might be higher. There's things that you can always look for. Don't be alarmed as a physique athlete if they're like, your inflammatory markers are really high, unless you've had like 3 days of rest prior to getting your bloods done. It's pretty common that they would be, because obviously we lift weights, and that is obviously a byproduct of that. You are going to accumulate a bit of fatigue and a bit of inflammation. But yeah, I think that website is by far the best. And there's the 3 panels. B3, I think from memory, is the most comprehensive. Has IGF-1, testosterone, free testosterone. If you just go to your GP, like I've had some of my clients say, my GP gave me my bloods and my test levels are good. And I'm like, okay, cool. But what are your free testosterone levels? Because they're the ones that we actually need to to be mindful of what testosterone is actually available. And like, oh, well, they didn't check for that, so I don't know. So this is, regardless of whether you're enhanced or not enhanced, these guys are the best. You literally go on, you pick it, they send you a script, and you can go anywhere and you just turn up the next day and it's done. And the results are so fast. I got mine in 24 hours.
Yeah, they're real quick. Yeah.
And especially for a female, you know, wanting to have a look at where estrogen levels, progesterone are, and it'll even tell you based on your endocrinology roughly where you are in your menstrual cycle, whether that it anticipates that where certain levels are at, you know, you're about to ovulate or you were ovulating, and you can have a look at those parameters. So if you're someone that hasn't, maybe you're suffering from oligomenorrhea, your cycle's irregular, and then you get this panel done and it says that this is roughly where you should be at this level, you might have thought that you were due to get your period, but actually it was meant to be last week and you had no idea because you're just so out of whack. So it can kind of give you some indication, and you have that. And then you know that, okay, roughly this is when I should be getting it. And you can kind of use that as a proxy going forward to keep an eye out for how things are going. And equally, it's not overly expensive. And I think when you're putting in the time and the effort and the money that we all invest into our bodybuilding endeavors, it's a piece of data that's extremely valuable when it's in the right hands.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I also tell female clients when they are going to get the test done, know where you think you're at in your cycle. Yeah. Because most people should be tracking it. There's a lot of tracking apps for people's cycles, so they should roughly know how many days they are or where they're currently at. On that point, great segue, because we got a question about coming off the pill and how it may impact training, but more so they wanted to know that their doctor said they can just come off and they'll be perfectly fine. And they went to a naturopath and they said, no, you actually should get some support to help your natural hormones come back on board. So maybe if you want to keep going with that, Scotty, do you normally have that conversation with female clients to say, if you're only on it for contraceptive reasons, maybe might be a good idea to take a look at coming off it? How do you kind of feel about that? I know it's always a touchy thing and something that you just need to educate clients on and let them make an informed decision.
Yeah, I think I would never tell anyone what they should or shouldn't be putting in their body, especially a female, you know, regarding contraception. People take it for different reasons. Other people have been taking it for longer. I think if you can avoid taking contraception, at the end of the day, you're putting exogenous compounds in your body that your body's already producing, and there is going to be some disruption. And lots of females later down the line do have issues with fertility as a result of changes in obviously sex hormones as a result of, you know, putting those compounds in your body for a period of time. But I think again, context is important. How long have you been taking? I know people that come off and then they're like, sweet, they're good to go. And others, it takes quite a while. And because I think a lot of people associate, oh, even when I'm on the pill, I still have a bleed, so I still get a period, but it's actually not really a bleed, it's a withdrawal bleed. So it's like, you're not really comparing apples with apples there. And so I think if ideally, if you can come off the pill before you start prep, I think it's better for you because it gives you a more honest representation from an endocrinological perspective where you're at. Because if you are taking contraception, again, you don't really know where you're at hormonally, because have I lost my pill? Some girls they just decide not to have a bleed because it's annoying. So they just keep, it happens, man. They just keep going through. So, which is also not ideal either. And in an ideal world, you would, like with any exogenous compound, you would cycle on, cycle off and give your body some time to recalibrate. But I think it's important when you finish, if you are noticing some things are a little bit different, again, only you would know how long you'd been on for. It's worth speaking to someone and again, getting some bloods done so you have an idea. But ideally, if you're testing someone who's been on oral contraceptive, you need to allow, everyone's different, but it's bespoke to the individual, but around about 3 to 6 months to let everything clear out before you're going to get an honest representation of where your bloods are at. Otherwise, it's just it's like you don't really know what you're looking at. And again, if it was me, I'd probably say go and get some bloods at 4 months, because that's probably a pretty good indicator. And then we'll do it again at 6 months and see if there's any change. And then and go from there. But I think it can be, if you come off and then you're not getting a period and you're noticing that there are some issues, I wouldn't just keep waiting and waiting. I would go and speak to someone and look at getting some assistance to bridge that gap. And also depends what kind of contraception you're on as well. They're not just, I'm on the pill, which one? They're so different now. There's so many different variants.
Yep.
And they have different compounds in them. Some are stronger than others. But yeah. And for those that obviously aren't aware, like what it actually does physiologically. So obviously you're taking that so that you don't get a period, but oral contraception, basically it inhibits follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone production. And that as a result causes downregulation of estrogen and progesterone. So that's basically why you would take it. And again, we need those hormones to function if we are going to be a healthy human being in terms of endocrinology wise. Like if you were wanting to have a baby and ovulate and all of those things, they need to be functioning optimally. And when you're taking the pill, you're obviously putting a compound in your body that's preventing that. And that's something that's natural and that occurs endogenously without you needing to do anything to it. So I think too many younger people maybe just, this is just my opinion, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I think too many younger people, like I have a daughter, so I know that when she gets to a point where she is, and sometimes they have to take it for prevention of acne and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
When she gets to that point, it'll be something where we'll sit down and I'll actually want to explain. Knowing me, I'll probably get out like an anatomy chart and go through it all in a little bit of detail. And she'll be sitting there like that. Oh my God, Dad. But just so that she actually understands how it works and some of the issues that you can have down the line, and also the differences between the two. And so, because that's what I mean, because some of them contain estrogen, some of them don't. Like, I think it's progestin contains progestin without estrogen. So it depends on what you're taking.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if you're taking it so that you can have unprotected sex, or if you're taking it because you don't want a period, or there's just so many different things. But equally, I think it's really important that you do your research and on the product as well. Like, what's in it? What's the history of it? What does your GP think? As always, you should consult with them. But if you are really wanting to get some information, speaking with an endocrinologist would be your best bet because they specify in this particular field.
Yeah. I think we've probably all had the conversation with clients that are on the pill just for contraceptive reasons. We all have the conversation. We're like, well, it would be better to be off it from a fat loss perspective. And it's up to you whether you want to make that decision, but that's the recommendation because, as we know, it will increase what we're taking in synthetic estrogen in most of them. So it's increasing that, therefore can increase fat storage, especially in that lower half, fluid retention, which is exactly where we don't want it to be and want it to go. So, knowing the way the looks are going within the federations, where they want some great conditioning in the lower half, glute ham tines and things like that, it's going to be difficult. So you have to weigh up, what you're considering and what is the best fit for you. Because if you want to get into that kind of level of conditioning, it may be something that's fighting you the whole way through your prep, for sure. And then as from an assistance perspective, if you do come off the pill, as you kind of said, you wait that 3 to 6 month period, wait for it to all come out of the system. Hopefully by that time, your period does naturally reoccur. But there are a couple of supplementations that you can take. There's some things just off the shelf if you go into a supplement store. There's some like female hormone health supplements. But out of my research and what I found works with my team is there's kind of 3 core ingredients. One is DIM, that helps with estrogen natural production, Vitex for progesterone, and boron for testosterone. So normally those 3 ingredients I want to see within a product, or I get them to take them separately and just go buy it off iHerb, or you even get some of those from Chemist Warehouse, and then get them to be on those 3 at a minimum. And then sometimes we'd even increase the amount of fat they have in their diet. So normally being a little bit more of a higher fat diet than what we traditionally would put someone on. Not like a keto or anything ridiculous, but just a little bit more fats than normal, just to help with that hormone production. Do you kind of see the same, MG?
Yeah, yeah. And like the other thing that Scotty mentioned about, coming off and really how long the body does actually take to sort of get back to where it was. He's like, just using myself for example. Obviously, males and females are different, but even me with my bloods, I think it was like 16 to 18 weeks before my testosterone profile got back to within the normal range from being like basically non-existent down in the toilet. So like it does take time.
Yeah, it takes, and it can be frustrating. And we're even talking about when you lose your cycle during your prep too. It can take a little bit of time. So be patient.
Like I've seen variances from like people who can get it back within 2 months all the way up to 15 months, man. Like
yeah.
And it really is individual. And like, I think, as far as I know, there's the only real research paper on it's that Halliday paper where the girl, it was a female, she was in really good nick when she started. She got inside out peeled, did everything right post prep, put on some fat mass recovery, and I think it was about 54 weeks in total till she got it back, and she had more body composition, weighed more, was in worse shape a year later, because that's just how long it took. And I've had females that have gotten, and more so it was the year of COVID, again, like me, dieted for way too long because we were hanging on for that show, inside out peeled, despite at 2100 come show day, like that's where their maintenance calories were. But it was probably a little over a year till it just came back to normal. And for girls that go through that, we're about to go into season B, that want to hang on to the shreds, that lose their cycle, the only way, just like with a male, and we speak about embracing the suck, feeling like shit, the only way that you're going to attenuate that and get back to homeostatic levels or to pre-prep levels is body composition accrual. You can eat all the foods you want, but if you're eating it and then I'm doing cardio, you need to take yourself out of a deficit and your body needs to feel safe and confident again. Because if you think about it, like logically, why do you have a period? It's part of being able to recreate another human, to build a human. If you're in a period of energy deprivation, why on earth would your body think that it's a safe or a good time for you to be able to conceive and grow a baby?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make any sense at all. So think of it on those terms. You need to get back to feeling good, and not just for a month, but consistently. Like EA needs to be consistent. And only then, when your body feels safe and you're not going up, down, up, down, up, down, will it give you back that cycle, and you'll notice that you feel so much better. So when your coach is like, we're going to employ a recovery diet and we need to hit these checkpoints, just listen, because they've got your best interest at heart. And if you don't, all you're doing is elongating the process, and likely meaning that you're going to have to potentially gain more body composition and stay, more uncomfortably heavier or fatter, so to speak, for a longer period of time, when you could have just done what you were advised to do. You pay these people for a reason, to help guide you. This is not the time to go rogue and try and hang on to your shreds so that you can get likes on Instagram.
Yeah. And
get in and get out.
Yeah. We have that conversation all the time. Like, we will continue to push people to bring their food up, to bring their composition up, to go back to a healthy weight where the body likes to be. And then we'd also make sure that all the other life stresses are also low too. Because we find that even though they're back to a good composition and their food is up and their cardio is down, and they're, if they're going through stressful situations within their life, that's not going to help either. So you normally find that when everything is where it needs to be across their life, across fitness, across everything, that's when the cycle comes back, and we're in a really, really good position. Okay, while we're talking about that, we actually got a question about recommendations of coaches that specialize in pregnancy training, like whilst they're pregnant. Do you know anyone, MG?
Yeah, so I've got Cole, who works for me, who's actually very, very good. But I don't think it's as difficult as people are thinking that it is. I think there's certain types of movements that you're definitely going to stay away from. Yeah. And I think really anyone who's kind of been in the industry or coached face-to-face for a couple of years should be able to deal with someone who is pregnant. I mean, the ultimate thing is this, right? You've got to think about the temperature of the baby, right? So the baby doesn't have the ability to cool down like the mother does. So like the baby can't sweat, doesn't have that ability to. So like you want to be able to manage the baby's body temperature. So it's really just about making sure that, you know, you're managing heart rate, you're managing intensity. Maybe your rest periods are going to be a little bit longer. And there's definitely some exercises that you're not going to do because of obviously the belly and the position that the baby's sitting in. But, you know, I would say the main focus would be around managing the athlete's body temperature.
Yeah.
And like, you're not going to be an idiot and have, you know, someone performing really, really heavy hip thrust with a barbell in that position with the baby being, you know, at 30 weeks. And equally things like box jumps, if you're someone who likes to do some high intensity stuff, are probably going to come out. Planks in certain positions, like, I think it can be very easily managed.
Yeah.
I mean, I've had an athlete who's a competitor, who is a listener, who literally had their last session with me the day before their C-section.
Yeah, that's right.
So, like, you don't need to stop training, and being pregnant isn't like the end of your fitness career. There's just going to be certain things that you're going to have to stay away from. Potentially your intensity is going to come, you know, down. But you absolutely can train all the way through.
Yeah, so intensity definitely comes down, and also we take out those lower body unilateral movements too. Everything's got to be like super stable.
Yeah.
And context is important too. Like I remember with, obviously my wife's been pregnant twice, but I remember the first time we found out, and Jen used to train more probably then than she does now because obviously 2 little kids, but back then she would be training 4 or 5 times a week. And I remember back then, this is going on 5 years, people, it was a bit murky. Like I remember the first time she was squatting or deadlifting, people saying, oh, should she really be doing that, whatever? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. She's been training X amount of time. There's nothing that's going to put her in an uncompromised position. Of course, I'm not going to put the mother that's carrying my child in a bad Aussie, but would deadlift, would squat, all those things. The day we had our birth booked in, even though Jen had a natural one, but we spoke with our obstetrician, managed to go on private. We want to have it on, this is when he was going to do it. It was a big baby. The day before we went in, she's a bit nervous. I'm like, let's just go into the gym. Jenny was squatting with the bar on her, but like she was squatting 30 kilos, but relative to her, she would normally be squatting 70 or 80 kilos. So it's not a lot of weight. She felt good moving around equally, didn't have any back pain throughout any of her pregnancies, felt amazing. Strong emphasis on training strong glutes, staying strong through her core. Isometric stuff is obviously not going to be anything flexion, extension of the spine. But I think people, and this is what my obstetrician said to us, is that people forget just how much protection is actually on in there. As long as you're not smashing your guts into the ground, like your body's designed to keep this baby safe. So as long as you're sensible, you don't do anything silly, it's fine. If you're feeling like I'm starting to get a bit out of breath, then just chill out for a sec, catch your breath and go again. If I'm getting really, really, really hot, as you spoke about, then take a breather, but equally hydrating, working out in an environment that doesn't allow you to get super, super hot, aircon, fans, things like that. There's an element of common sense. So I think and ever since then, it's gone from being like, I reckon we would have had at least in that period, probably 30 or 40 women that have been pregnant that have come through, and equally because they saw all those things that Jen was doing. Oh, it's okay. It must be fine. And there's that, because originally it was like, you can't lift weights when you're pregnant because it's dangerous for the baby. Says fucking who? So it's just one of those things. It's an old lifestyle. It's like when people were saying to me at the start of my prep, you shouldn't really be having them because they're really bad for you. And I remember looking at this member and saying, really, explain to me why, or where did you hear that? It's just mainstream. Oh, I just heard it was always really bad. Just like it's bad to have carbs before you go to bed. Like, it's just one of those things. So I think the more that you educate yourself, if you're working with someone that understands anatomy and that has trained someone who's pregnant before, and you're not just deciding now that you're pregnant, I want to start lifting weights, then I don't see a problem with it at all. I think it's important and I encourage it. It's going to make your birth better, because when you have a baby, and you'll see this in you boys when you guys have a family, watching your partner give birth, it's like a marathon. It requires so much energy and intensity. And every female that I train that has had a baby is like, it was just like a brutal leg session. Like that last push is just like the heaviest squat or a deadlift. And to be able to tell the difference between that versus, you hear stories of people that don't and have, and I know of people that have just horrendous births. And second time around, we're like, fuck that. Before we're going to have a baby, I'm going to make sure I'm training, I'm fit, and I'm healthy, because it is physically the hardest thing that you'll ever do. Not to scare girls out there about having babies, but just train hard, lift weights. But all of those that are weapons in the gym, mate, they just pop them out, no dramas.
Yeah. Honestly, my clients that have had babies, they rebound and recover really, really quickly if they've trained all the way up until the end.
Mm-hmm.
I was reading something the other day, man, on a web thing. It was like some lady who had been through pregnancy was like, there was this comparison to the level of like the pain threshold was like for a male breaking 21 bones at the same time. I was like, how do you make that measurement? Not 19, not 25, 21 bones at the same time.
Yeah, no.
And equally, if you do have one, if you do have a baby, this is a pet peeve of mine, and you're like, I've got to go to clinical Pilates because I've got a little bit of diastasis recti. Guess what? Everyone's going to have that because your abs are going to separate. For those that don't know, it's just separation of the abdominal wall when your stomach stretches for that distension. You don't need, and they're gonna say to you, a lot of them are self-serving. Sorry to generalize, but they are. I want to see you 12 more times before you do that. Like I remember the physio that Jenny saw was like, I reckon maybe at least another 7 or 8. And I was like, nah, fuck that. We don't need you to do that. Like, it's fine. I can feel it. There's 2.5 centimeters. That'll close on its own. 2 weeks later, she was back squatting, deadlifting. It's dependent on the person, but don't be like convinced or sold that you've got to keep doing all of that, because then they'll also be like, and you've got to do the toning as well, which will help. No, you don't. You need to just like close the gap a little bit and then just go by how you feel. If you can brace isometrically, if you can do body weight squats without pain, you're better off doing that than flinging your leg up in the air and doing your Galates, because it's going to help you tone faster.
So I can't get toned.
You should have seen my face, man. Like when she was talking to me, and I was like, I'm actually a sports scientist. So everything you're saying, we're probably on different ends of the spectrum in terms of what you're saying is what you believe, and what I'm saying is right and you're wrong. I remember Jenny just being like, "Oh, we need to leave."
Yeah, I could imagine Jen, poor thing. Having a step like, oh, God. He's going to get the anatomy chart out again. Oh, God.
You're the best. Oh, that's so good.
That's so good.
I'd love to be there. We might finish up, but what I might do, just the very, very last, because I know it's pretty common too, is, you know, when the females are pregnant, they feel like they need to eat for 2.
Oh,
so
man.
do you want to tell us, like, really how much of a surplus do you really need to be on during that time?
So arbitrary numbers, but and again, bespoke to the individual, but roughly first trimester, you're looking at maybe 100 to 150 calories more. Mm-hmm. Second trimester, about the same. And then the third, it's basically double. So if you needed roughly 100, 150, but it depends on how active you are. So I think we tracked Jen's, I think she was putting away like high 2000s throughout most of hers, but equally she was so sick. All she would be able to eat was like potato and French fries. And that was what she lived on for the first 24 weeks. But when you're active and training every day like she was, she could have more. Whereas there's women that I know of that would just sit at a desk all day and eat chocolate and probably eating 2,000 calories more, and they blow out hugely because they're just, and it's the old, you're eating for 2. So just to clear something up, the baby is going to get whatever nutrients, whatever you're eating, anything that's good that it goes into the bloodstream is going to be delivered to the baby first. They get what they need. And you, as the mother that's growing this baby, you get the scraps. You get whatever's left over. So if you're eating shit, if you're having 1 serve of veggies a day and you're eating lots of junk, then your baby's going to get the goodness from that. But equally, I don't know why you would do that. Now is the time to fuel your body with everything that it needs, and you'll feel so much better. Versus if you don't, then you may find that your baby may not grow at the same rate as what it optimally could, but equally, you're going to feel sick, immunological downregulation, because you're not getting the nutrients that you need. So you don't need as much food as what you think that you need. And a really good proxy is just if you're tracking what your weight's doing, like if you're consistently going, if you work off the, again, everyone's going to be different, but anywhere from 7 kilos to people that have a larger, let's say that if they're an endomorph, their skeletal structure's bigger, they may gain a bit more. But I think like on average, I mean, Jen's normally like 51, 52 kilos. I think she gained like maybe 11 kilos or something like that. Whereas there are girls that I know and some of her friends that gain like 20, 25 that just, and then had a real hard time afterwards as well. And another thing, if you're breastfeeding and you've just had a baby, you need your ability, like one of the best times to lose body composition is after you've had a baby. Your calories are through the roof because your body is just like burning energy like a freight train to produce milk. But equally, if you're not consuming enough food and fluid, then again, you may not be able to feed optimally, and your milk might dry up a lot quicker as well. A lot of people don't know about that, the importance of actually still eating a lot. Like as a dad, when your wife's had that baby, I remember I was like full-time just feeding her, just like an eating machine, because they need it to keep going. So on the other side of it, if you're breastfeeding, there's definitely a need for that. And you can actually lose a lot of that body composition and edema very quickly. But when you're pregnant, you don't need anywhere near what you thought you needed.
Yeah. And also there's a lot of calculations online where you can pop your body weight in and it'll tell you like percentage increase through all the trimesters and how much weight you should be gaining roughly within ranges. Yeah.
But if you work off those parameters, it's pretty rare. Like again, if you're someone that eats 2,500 a day, I would say work within around about 15% of that. So between 2,500 and say 2,800 in trimester one, and then just do a little add-on as you go forward. But if your baseline levels of, if you're eating 1,600 calories, then if you're eating 1,800 in the first trimester, then you're good to go. But equally, there's an element of auto-regulating as well. And I think if you're hungry and you're like, I'm really genuinely hungry, and you understand that you need more food, then eat a bit more food. But equally, there'll be times where you don't. But using the old, I'm pregnant, the pregnancy cravings, sometimes there are them, but equally, there's definitely sometimes it's just, and this is my wife saying this is not me being a sexist pig. For those that are like, what would you know? You haven't grown a baby. Even she would be like, so many people just lean into it's bullshit. Oh my God. There are times where you might need to eat something, but you don't need to eat a whole packet of Tim Tams because cravings.
Yeah.
Like you can have a Tim Tam.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, boys. That was good. I think we'll leave it there. So we answered we definitely had a theme
bit of a different episode today.
Yeah, definitely a theme throughout this episode, which is good. We stayed on one track, which is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully everyone got a lot out of it, and maybe the competitors are competing right now probably like, yeah, this is useful, but maybe not right now, but maybe in the future.
Yeah, maybe
what we said.
You know what? When they decide they're going to have a baby, they're going to be armed to the ears.
Yeah, they're going to listen to this episode again for sure. All right, boys. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you, boys.
See you, legends.
Chat soon, guys.
Take care.